European soldiers showed up in West Africa expecting an easy win, thinking this would be another quick plant the flag, shake hands, take resources kind of expedition. And then they saw it, an army of women sprinting directly toward their rifles, screaming, yelling, stomping, and doing all the things that make you pause mid-breath and wonder if someone forgot to warn you about the plot twist in history. And this was not chaos, not superstition, and not some dramatic misunderstanding caused by smoke or distance. It was a full-fledged military assault carried out by trained soldiers who just happened to be women, not the kind waving decorative flags or performing ceremonial dances. These were frontline shock troops, disciplined, merciless, and terrifying. The kingdom of Dahome's most dangerous weapon, known to themselves as the Mino, meaning our mothers, and nicknamed the Dahomey Amazons by outsiders who could not come up with a better description. And while Europe had spent centuries insisting that war was a man's job and women belonged safely at home, Dahomey had already ignored that rule, training an all-female army that ran faster, fought harder, and scared the living daylights out of their enemies, forcing colonial officers to panic quietly in their journals, scribbling lines like "this cannot be real" and "surely exaggeration" while watching women march, shout, fight, and die for their kingdom, with more coordination and ferocity than any European battalion expected to see in a lifetime. The Dahomey Amazons didn't exist because someone woke up one morning and thought, wouldn't it be fun to terrify Europe? They existed because the kingdom of Dahomey was surrounded by rivals, constantly at war, and survival required creativity, discipline, and a complete rewrite of what a soldier could be. So beginning in the 17th century, Dahomey's rulers started recruiting women as palace guards and hunters, discovering quickly that these women were not only fearless but smarter, faster, and sharper than many male soldiers. And instead of politely dismissing that as coincidence, the kingdom decided to double down, turning these women into a permanent military institution, pulling in girls from families, captives from wars, and volunteers seeking status, power, and food, and then immediately cutting them off from normal civilian life entirely. No marriage, no children, no family ties, no excuses, just the king, the state, the battlefield, and a lifetime of relentless training, which was brutal even by modern standards, climbing thorn walls barefoot to toughen their feet and bodies, marching for days without food or water to build endurance, practicing hand-to-hand combat until muscles burned and bones ached, learning to kill without hesitation, and training their minds to treat fear as a flaw that needed to be removed entirely, while also executing prisoners to desensitize themselves to the reality of battlefield carnage, which is basically a masterclass in psychological conditioning. And it didn't stop there. Every Amazon was drilled in coordination, strategy, and formations, so that when thousands of these women moved together, they were like a single living weapon, moving with terrifying precision across any terrain, forests, savannas, even rivers, capable of flanking, ambushing, and breaking through enemy lines like a force of nature. They were fed, clothed, and paid by the state, given ranks and uniforms, and held accountable with punishments as extreme as death for failure or disobedience, meaning these women were not symbolic warriors or decorative palace guards. They were salaried professionals whose entire existence revolved around winning wars, defending their kingdom, and rewriting the rules of combat in West Africa, a reality that would one day leave colonial officers muttering, How is this possible? By the time they were adults, the Mino were experts in every type of warfare the kingdom faced. They were trained in firearms as they became available, skilled in archery, blades, and improvised weapons, and could fight in dense forests, open fields, or siege situations. They were also taught intelligence gathering, reconnaissance, and psychological warfare, including how to intimidate enemies through war chants, synchronized movements, and sheer presence. Recruits were tested repeatedly. Those who faltered were punished or expelled, and only the strongest, fastest, and most cunning survived. Over decades, this process created a military force unlike any other in the world. All female, highly disciplined, terrifyingly effective, and utterly loyal to the state. And yes, their lives were extreme, their childhood stolen, and their humanity bent to the will of the kingdom. But Dahomey thrived because of them. Neighboring kingdoms feared them, and internal rebellion was nearly impossible because the Amazons enforced order with both charisma and sheer force. These women had effectively flipped the idea of gender on its head. In a world where men were trained to lead armies, the most feared fighting force in West Africa was made entirely of women, and they were proud of it. European colonists would later write accounts filled with disbelief, fear, and grudging respect, because no one in their military manuals had prepared them for what a female army could actually do. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the Dahomey Amazons had fully cemented their reputation as one of Africa's deadliest fighting forces, leading raids, enforcing tributes, expanding borders, and maintaining a kingdom where military power was central to both survival and wealth. Their enemies whispered stories about their ferocity. Some spread legends about women who would charge straight into cannon fire with swords in hand, laughing, screaming, and refusing to retreat. Stories that would later terrify European officers who encountered them firsthand. When France arrived in the late 1800s, they assumed, like every colonial power did, that conquest would be straightforward. Guns, discipline, and strategy would be enough to bend Dahomey to their will. But they hadn't counted on the Mino. The Amazons were veterans, not ceremonial guards. They were a professional army that had been fighting, training, and perfecting tactics for generations. They advanced through artillery fire, scaling walls, storming fortified positions, and engaging in close combat at bayonet range, forcing French soldiers to retreat, regroup, and sometimes hide in shock at the scene unfolding before them. Officers recorded, sometimes in disbelief, that these women refused to retreat, even when facing devastating losses, and that they coordinated attacks with precision, almost like a single living machine, using formations, flanking maneuvers, and psychological tactics to break the enemy. It was a battle of worlds colliding, pre-industrial discipline and sheer human endurance against industrial weaponry. The Amazons could not compete with machine guns forever, but they were experts at extracting maximum cost from every encounter, inflicting casualties and delaying conquest. Some officers wrote about the shock of seeing women who were not just brave, but terrifyingly skilled, organized, and ruthless, which shattered European assumptions about gender, combat, and the nature of military power. Dahomey's resistance showed that victory in colonial conquest was never guaranteed by courage or planning alone. It was a brutal combination of technology, numbers, and persistence. Dahomey finally fell to French colonial forces, but the Amazons did not vanish because they failed. They vanished because their existence was inconvenient for the empire that defeated them. The surviving Mino were disarmed, disbanded, and pushed into obscurity, deliberately erased from history books and official records. Their existence was reduced to curiosities, legends, and myths that seemed almost too incredible to believe. But even in quiet corners of West Africa, some survived into the 20th century, quietly telling their stories. Stories of courage, discipline, and a female military force that had fought, conquered, and terrified European soldiers who thought they understood war. The Dahomey Amazons remain one of history's most uncomfortable truths, because they prove that power is not inherently tied to gender, that professional skill, discipline, and organization matter more than who wears pants or skirts, and that for decades, an all-female army dominated, expanded, and resisted European colonial powers head-on. Their legacy refuses to fit neatly into textbooks, because it challenges centuries of assumptions about who fights, who dies, and what history is supposed to look like, leaving us with one unshakable truth. Sometimes the most formidable warriors are the ones you never expected, and the stories they leave behind refuse to be forgotten.